1875, upstate New York, in a small farming town tucked between the Adirondack Mountains and a frozen lake, the Caldwell family welcomed their only son, Timothy, under unusual circumstances. He didn't cry when he was born. He just stared, calmly, at the candlelight flickering in the corner of the room. The midwife said, "That boy's watching something none of us can see." By age 2, he had built a mobile made of sticks and gears hanging above his cradle. No one taught him how. By age 4, he could recite passages from the Old Testament in Latin, though his family only spoke English. By 6, he had already drafted blueprints for a wind-powered grain sifter. Doctors were brought in, first local, then from Albany, then even from Yale. No diagnosis could fully define him. Some called it savantism. Others said he was simply a fluke of nature, but no label could cage what he truly was: unexplainable. The townspeople began to treat him as an omen. Some said he was blessed, others whispered of curses. Timothy, quiet and calm, never lashed out. He simply observed, helped where he could, and wrote, always wrote. By 9, he had filled 12 journals. When a severe flood struck in 1873, Timothy, now 12, rigged a pulley and drainage system out of scraps and leftover iron. It diverted the rising water from flooding the village's lower quarters. He saved not just homes but families, and yet he remained an outsider. Timothy didn't go to school. He didn't attend church like other children. He spent his time reading, building, listening. The local librarian once found him sitting for hours just watching snow fall, then went home to find a 6-page essay in the return slot titled "The Mathematics of a Flake." He never asked for attention. He wasn't chasing fame, he was simply responding to a pull inside him. One winter evening in 1875, during a blizzard, Timothy went missing. No footprints in the snow, no signs of struggle, just a window open in his attic and his final journal left on his desk. The last words written, "I came here to observe, not to be understood. If you found this, then maybe you're ready." He was only 16. Search parties looked for weeks. His parents grieved. The town mourned. But over time, as people read his journals, they began to change. His inventions helped redesign their mills and farming equipment. His essays inspired teachers to see differently, gifted children in new light. His life became a quiet spark for a more open-minded generation. Timothy didn't live long, but he left something lasting, not just devices or diagrams, but a deeper question. What if the world's most misunderstood people are the ones sent to elevate it? In a world that worships data, formulas, and scientific certainty, we often forget that not every answer worth having can be found under a microscope or written in an equation. Science, while powerful, has its limits, and beyond those boundaries lie the most human of truths: love, pain, faith, intuition, and the mysteries of the soul. These are not less valuable because they cannot be measured. They are more valuable because they transcend measurement. Some answers can't be measured in a laboratory is not an attack on science. It's a reminder that while science can explain the how, it often falls short of the why. And in the moments that truly test us, grief, heartbreak, moral courage, forgiveness, no machine, no algorithm, no formula can carry us through. Only something deeper can. The story of the falling leaf. Imagine a scientist studying a tree in autumn. He carefully observes the leaves changing color. He can record the temperature, chart the rate of chlorophyll breakdown, analyze wind patterns, and measure the exact moment a leaf detaches from the branch and flutters to the ground. But he can't tell you why watching that leaf fall made a woman across the park start to cry, because some answers aren't found in test tubes. They're written in memory, emotion, and experience, things no laboratory can quantify. The questions we can't dissect. What does it feel like to lose someone who made your soul feel alive? Why do we sometimes sense danger before it happens? Why does a mother feel her child's pain without a word spoken? What causes a person to forgive the unforgivable? These aren't scientific riddles. These are spiritual questions, emotional truths. You can run all the blood tests, brain scans, and psychological assessments you want, but they won't provide you with the full story. They might show you a brain pattern, but they can't decode the human spirit behind it. Faith over facts. You can't measure hope. You can't bottle faith. You can't weigh love or photograph integrity. You can't run a lab test on the strength it takes for a person to get out of bed after burying a child. Yet these things shape the world far more than facts alone. A mother praying over her sick child isn't thinking about chemical balances. She's holding on to something beyond logic. That's not ignorance. That's the highest form of bravery. The world is held together not just by physics and gravity, but by the invisible threads of belief, loyalty, and sacrifice. The human experience isn't always rational. We live in an era that wants everything to be understood to be solved. But the truth is, there's power in mystery. There's beauty in not having all the answers. There's wisdom in realizing that just because you can't see something doesn't mean it isn't real. The most meaningful moments of your life will never fit inside a laboratory. No machine will ever replicate what it feels like to fall in love, to hold your child for the first time, or to forgive someone who shattered your heart. We are not machines. We are not math problems. We are living stories with layers that can't be dissected. Timothy Caldwell's legacy. Remember Timothy Caldwell, the boy science couldn't explain. Every test said he shouldn't be able to do what he did. No academic record, no formal education, yet he spoke languages he never learned. He built machines no one taught him to construct. He perceived things no one else could see. The doctors were baffled. The scholars frustrated, but Timothy never sought their approval. He simply lived his truth, quietly, humbly, mysteriously. His life was the embodiment of this keynote. Some answers can't be measured in a laboratory. Because science didn't explain him, but his impact proved he was real. Closing reflection. Don't be discouraged if your purpose, your pain, or your path doesn't make sense to the world. You don't need to be explained to be valid. You don't need to be understood to be authentic. You are more than chemicals, more than statistics, more than analysis. You are a soul with depth, a mind with intuition, a heart with stories no microscope will ever read. And that's what makes you human. From the moment we're born, the world starts measuring us. Are we tall enough, fast enough, smart enough, normal enough? And when we don't fit into those neat little boxes, when we stand out, speak differently, think uniquely, or walk a path no one else walks, we're too often told that something is wrong with us. But here's the truth no one tells you early enough. Being different isn't a curse, it's a clue. It's a signal, a whisper, a divine hint that you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to break through. The world doesn't celebrate sameness. It benefits from difference. Take a look at the world's greatest innovators, leaders, and pioneers. They all had something that set them apart, something the world didn't understand at first. Nikola Tesla saw energy in ways others couldn't comprehend. Rosa Parks had the audacity to sit still when the world expected her to stand down. Vincent van Gogh saw colors others called madness. Helen Keller, blind and deaf, touched millions with words she couldn't see or hear. Each of them carried the weight of being different, but they didn't let the world convince them that their difference was a defect. They knew it was a clue to purpose, a clue to legacy. In 1875, Timothy Caldwell didn't fit in. The townsfolk whispered behind his back. Teachers didn't know what to do with him. He didn't talk like the other boys. He didn't play like them either, and the things he built, machines out of scraps and drawings made from memory, baffled every expert who came to study him. Was he cursed, possessed, broken? No. He was gifted in a way the world hadn't seen yet. It took years before anyone realized that Timothy wasn't lacking. He was leading. He was miles ahead in a race no one else had entered yet. His curse wasn't a curse at all. It was a clue that he was built for a different track, a different pace, a different purpose. Don't let them redefine you. The world has a habit of labeling what it doesn't understand. Weird, slow, too emotional, too quiet, too intense. But every label they stick on your soul is just evidence that you're operating on a frequency they haven't tuned into yet. And guess what? You don't have to shrink to make them comfortable. You don't have to bend to be accepted. You just have to follow the clue your difference gives you. If you feel emotions deeply, maybe you're meant to be a healer. If you question everything, maybe you're meant to challenge systems. If you don't fit in anywhere, maybe it's because you were born to build a place that doesn't exist yet. Your difference is your direction. Instead of asking, why am I not like them? Start asking, what is my difference trying to show me? Your difference is like a compass. It points you toward where you should be, not where others want you to be. The very thing that made you feel out of place as a child may become the thing that places you at the center of your calling as an adult. You're not off course. You're on a road less traveled, and that's where the best destinations lie. Your light will be too bright for some. Don't be surprised when people try to dim your light. It's not because you're too much. It's because they're not used to that kind of brilliance. Some people are so used to darkness. Your difference feels threatening. But that doesn't mean you should flicker or fade. It means you should shine brighter, because some people need your light to find their own way. In a town that measured worth by years and titles, Timothy Caldwell was a stubborn contradiction, a child with the quiet gravity of a man who had read life's margins and learned its grammar. People assumed wisdom arrived with age, that lessons came only after decades of trial. Timothy proved otherwise. He showed that wisdom is not a trophy earned by surviving years. It is the product of attention, humility, and the courage to listen. From the moment he first spoke, Timothy's words had weight. He never talked to fill silence. He spoke to make it mean something. When other children shouted and chased one another through the dusty streets, Timothy sat by the riverbank, watching eddies and sketching the pattern of water on scrap paper. He asked questions that made grown men pause, not questions meant to confuse, but questions meant to understand. Why does the mill creak at sunrise? What makes the moon seem colder in winter? Those questions were small keys that opened doors adults had long ignored. What made Timothy's wisdom surprising wasn't that he knew things, it was how he acquired them. He did not attend university. He had no formal mentor. He learned by observing, by staying present, and by refusing to accept the easy answer. He read signs where others saw only noise. He listened to the rhythm of tools, the cadence of weather, and the way people folded their grief into daily routines. Wisdom for him was less a matter of book learning and more an ethic. Pay attention, then act with compassion. There's a particular kind of wisdom that arrives early in those who have tasted uncertainty. When life hands you more questions than comforts, you either harden or you sharpen. Timothy sharpened. The boy who could fix a broken pulley with a single scrap of iron also knew how to sit with a neighbor whose hands trembled from loss. He could explain the mechanics of a windmill and, in the same breath, remind a widow that the ache of the heart would change, not disappear. That combination, technical understanding married to tender insight, is what made his counsel rare and real. Communities often misread early wisdom. They expect authority to come with decades, so they discount the young and exalt the old simply by virtue of time served. But age alone does not guarantee reflection. Plenty grow older while never learning to listen. Timothy's example flips that assumption. Depth is born of curiosity, not calendars. A 9-year-old who studies a problem patiently can outthink a 50-year-old who answers with the first comfortable assumption. Timothy's youth also gave him an unusual advantage, a clarity unburdened by ego. Adults frequently defend their views because their identity has become wrapped up in them. A child, unshaped by that need to be right, can see more honestly. Timothy's decisions were often simpler and therefore truer. He would sketch a solution, explain it plainly, and if it failed, he'd learn and try again. That humility, the willingness to be wrong and to grow publicly, is a cornerstone of wisdom that many never attain. Another element of Timothy's early wisdom was a refusal to separate mind from heart. He believed intelligence without empathy was brittle, compassion without curiosity was aimless. So he apprenticed himself to both, the mechanics of wind and water and the mysteries of human sorrow and stubborn joy. This blend made his contributions practical and humane. When the river breached its banks, it was Timothy's pulley and his insistence that neighbors check on elderly homes that saved lives. When a teacher doubted a child's quiet talents, it was Timothy who tutored the shy student and showed how tenderness can translate into confidence. The story of Timothy Caldwell teaches a timeless truth. Wisdom is a practice available to anyone willing to notice, to question, and to serve regardless of age. If you are young, don't wait to be taken seriously. Learn so well that they cannot ignore you. If you are old, remember that years alone do not honor you, continued curiosity does. So when the town whispered that a boy knew too much, what they really meant was that he refused to live small. Timothy used every hour he was given few, as they were to study deeply and to give generously. His journals, filled with both diagrams and reflections, remind us that the measure of a life is not its length but its insistence on learning and loving. In the end, Timothy's legacy was not an age he reached but the wisdom he shared. A simple, uncompromising lesson for us all: listen more, learn always, and let your actions honor what you learn. Age is an address, not a credential. Wisdom belongs to whoever earns it. In a world that praises noise and connection, silence is often mistaken for weakness. Solitude is misunderstood. People tend to believe that being alone is a sign of being broken or unwanted. But for Timothy Caldwell, the boy's science couldn't explain isolation wasn't punishment. It was training. The quiet didn't crush him. It carved him into something extraordinary. Timothy didn't choose to be isolated. The strange, unexplainable energy he carried scared people. Animals responded to him as if they could feel a storm inside his body. Electrical currents seemed to pulse through his hands. Machines acted strangely in his presence. Teachers whispered. Neighbors stared, and over time the world gently and then forcefully shut its doors to him. At 12, he became a mystery people feared more than they tried to understand. So Timothy retreated. He spent hours in the attic of his grandfather's farmhouse, surrounded by gears, copper wires, and half-finished journals. The world thought it had sent him away. What it didn't know was that isolation was not the end of Timothy's story. It was the beginning of his becoming. When you're forced into solitude, two things happen. You either sink into despair, or you begin to mine the depths of your own strength. Timothy did the latter. He learned to sit with the silence, and eventually he started hearing things most people miss: the language of patterns, the heartbeat of machines, the voice inside that no crowd could drown out. Isolation stripped away the noise, no opinions, no expectations, just space, and in that space, strength revealed itself, not the kind that shouts or competes, but the kind that builds something permanent. Timothy started designing mechanisms that made no sense to the average person. He mapped sound into motion, heat into pulses, and emotion into coded signals. With no one to applaud or critique him, he worked purely from instinct and curiosity. And that's the secret. In isolation, you stop performing and start becoming. We live in a culture that says strength is measured by visibility, followers, applause, constant engagement. But real strength often grows in hidden places. A seed doesn't sprout on the surface. It grows under pressure, under dirt, in darkness. That's what Timothy's isolation did for him. It rooted him so deeply in who he was that no external storm could shake his purpose. One of the most powerful moments in his story happened when a flood hit the town. Power lines were down, communications were cut off, and all the modern technologies the people depended on failed. They didn't know who to call. They were paralyzed, and then, without warning, a signal was sent, a homemade frequency built by Timothy. It used weather shifts, heat variation, and sound wave redirection. His invention, created in solitude, guided the town to higher ground. Lives were saved, not because he had help, but because he had learned to rely on his own strength in the silence. Isolation revealed what no community ever could: his resilience. It's important to understand Timothy didn't become strong because he wanted to be alone. He became strong because he learned what most people avoid: how to be with himself without losing his soul. He learned to process rejection without becoming bitter, to walk alone without forgetting his destination, and to build without waiting for approval. For anyone today who feels isolated not by choice, but by life's unpredictable currents, remember this: isolation is not evidence that you're weak. It's proof that you are being sharpened in private. You are being prepared for something the world may not yet understand. Just because people don't see your worth today doesn't mean you don't have it. Often, the most powerful people are invisible until the day the world needs what only they have. Isolation teaches you to depend on yourself, to trust the process, to hear your own voice more clearly than the world's noise. And when you re-enter the world, you come not as someone asking to be seen, but as someone who sees more clearly than most. In Timothy's case, the very thing people thought would break him, loneliness, was the thing that built him. And in a time when the world was falling apart, it was the quiet boy in the attic who held it together. So if you're alone, don't panic, listen, build, trust, because isolation does not mean you're lost. It means you're being found by the strongest, truest version of yourself. In 1875, Timothy Caldwell wasn't just a boy with unusual abilities, he was a boy gifted beyond the bounds of science. But what no one seemed to understand, not even Timothy at first, was that a gift doesn't make you special. It makes you responsible. Too often, we think of gifted people as rare treasures to be admired, put on pedestals, applauded, envied. But a true gift is never meant to be worn like a crown. It's meant to be carried like a torch, with humility, with purpose, and with the awareness that it's not about you, it's about what you do with it. When Timothy first realized he could hear things other people couldn't, feel vibrations in wires, sense the intention of mechanical movement, and detect atmospheric shifts before weather changed, he didn't feel powerful. He felt afraid. Everyone else assumed his difference gave him an advantage, something that set him apart. But for Timothy, it felt like a curse, not because the gift was wrong, but because the weight of it was heavy. And when you're young, misunderstood, and alone, heavy things feel even heavier. But slowly, through trial and solitude, he began to learn something crucial. A gift is not proof you're better than others. It's proof you've been entrusted with something that isn't fully yours. Think of a gift like a key. A key doesn't announce how special you are. It simply opens a door that others might not be able to open. Once that door is opened, you're not meant to lock yourself inside. You're meant to walk through it and lead others to what's on the other side. That's what Timothy started to understand. The strange sensitivity he had to machines wasn't so he could impress people. It wasn't so he could be famous or praised. It was so he could serve even when no one else knew he was doing it. During the winter of 1876, when the town's heating system, a newly installed network of coal-powered water radiators, began to fail, engineers couldn't find the issue. Pipes were freezing. Elderly people were getting sick. Infants were dying. Timothy quietly studied the layout, felt the floor beneath his bare feet, and followed the trail of irregular pulses. He didn't need to see the blueprints. His gift allowed him to sense the blockage buried deep within a shaft that no one else could access or even detect. He didn't announce what he found. He simply offered a solution, and lives were saved. No one threw him a parade. No statue was built in his honor, but he didn't use his gift for recognition. He used it because it was right. That's the difference between someone who sees their gift as a crown and someone who sees it as a responsibility. The ones who think their gift makes them more important will waste it trying to prove their worth. The ones who understand that their gift makes them useful will quietly change the world even when the world isn't watching. Timothy's story challenges all of us to reflect on our own talents. Maybe you're gifted with words, or compassion, or leadership. Maybe you can build. Maybe you can teach. Maybe you carry emotional strength, or vision, or wisdom. Whatever it is, the gift itself isn't what makes you valuable. It's how you use it that counts, because a gift left unused or misused becomes a burden. But a gift stewarded well, shared humbly, invested carefully becomes a blessing, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Gifts are not meant to elevate you, they're meant to equip you to serve, to protect, to build, to heal. Timothy didn't walk around asking people to recognize his genius. He used it in silence, he honored it in solitude. And in doing so, he proved something far more powerful than talent. He proved character. That's the final truth. A gift reveals who you are. If you use it for selfish gain, the world may clap, but your soul will ache. If you use it with integrity, the world may never notice, but heaven will. Timothy Caldwell never wore his gift like a crown. He wore it like armor. And when his town needed a quiet hero, they didn't find one in a palace. They found one in a dusty attic building, listening, serving. So ask yourself, what have you been given, and more importantly, what are you doing with it? Because a true gift doesn't point to you, it points to your purpose. In a world that celebrates noise, the loudest voice, the brightest lights, the biggest applause, it's easy to forget that some of the greatest legacies are built in silence. Not every hero has a crowd. Not every contribution is announced, and not every legacy comes with a name carved in stone. Take the story of Timothy Caldwell, the boy science couldn't explain. He never gave speeches. He never published journals. He never claimed to be special, yet, in the quiet corners of history, his life left a mark that outlived him, not because he made a scene, but because he made a difference. By the time Timothy was 12, he had already repaired 2 vital systems in his town that had baffled adult engineers. When the telegraph lines failed one summer, it wasn't a specialist from Boston who restored the signal. It was Timothy, quietly tracing wires and listening to what others could not hear. And he didn't ask for money. He didn't even take credit. He just wanted people to be connected again. And that's the thing, he was never after legacy. He was after impact. The mistake many of us make is thinking that legacy has to be public to be powerful. But that's not true. Some of the most transformative legacies in this world don't come from people who speak on stages. They come from people who simply show up, over and over again, faithfully, humbly. Silently, legacy, at its core, is about what remains after you're gone, not what trends, not what people post, not what crowds remember for a day. It's what continues because you gave something of yourself, even when no one was watching. Timothy never had a formal education, but he understood the power of unseen effort. He worked in barns, basements, and broken-down buildings, tuning machines, reinforcing structural beams, rerouting failing systems. When no one could figure out how the water filtration system in the West Quarter stopped working, Timothy quietly carved a new intake valve out of wood, reinforced it with copper, and installed it without fanfare. The families whose children stopped getting sick never knew his name, but they drank clean water because of him. That's legacy. You don't have to be known by everyone to matter deeply to someone. And while the world often defines legacy as what you're remembered for, the truth is deeper than that. Legacy is what people continue doing because of you. It's the attitude you passed on, the kindness you modeled, the sacrifices you made that shaped others, the values you instilled, not through lectures, but through how you lived, and most of that happens quietly, privately, silently. Timothy's story challenges us to rethink what it means to leave something behind. You don't have to have a platform, you don't have to have a plaque, you don't even have to have your name remembered. You just have to be willing to build even when no one claps. His silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom, because some of the strongest things on this earth, the roots of trees, the foundations of buildings, the stillness of a steady heart, are silent, but essential. And in the end, that's what Timothy left behind. A stronger town, healthier systems, children who lived, connections that held. Not because he shouted his contributions from rooftops, but because he did the work when no one was watching. Silence is not absence. Sometimes it's the very space where legacy is shaped. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't have to wait for a platform to matter. You don't need 1 million followers to make a difference. You don't need applause to have purpose. You just need to show up, to do what's right, to give your gift, to build something that lasts even if no one sees it being built. Because legacy is not about being seen, it's about what continues. Timothy Caldwell is not found in most history books, but the lives he saved, the systems he fixed, the integrity he lived with, they echo. They whisper through generations. Do the work, stay the course, leave it better than you found it, even if no one knows your name. So if you're quietly building something today, keep going. If you're loving your family, showing up at work, serving behind the scenes, keep going. You may not hear applause, but you are building something that will outlast you. Because sometimes your difference is not your weakness, it's your assignment. You don't need to be understood to be effective. You don't need to fit in to matter. Sometimes your greatest strength lies in what no one else sees. Yet, Timothy Caldwell wasn't science's failure to explain. He was humanity's invitation to open its mind.